Freddie mentioned, oh, there we go. It just started. We just talked about a few announcements. The Trees in the West conference is going to happen here at the Spur. We have now a forestry hub at the Spur, which is very exciting, an urban forestry hub for the state of Colorado. We have researchers doing research in urban forestry here at the Spur, which is pretty awesome. Have you watched that show, Eureka? Like, it's an old show. That's what I feel like when I come to the Spur every day. It's like all these scientists and smart people. It's pretty cool. And if you haven't been to the Spur, you want a tour afterwards, I am very willing to do that. So the Spur is kind of a mix of an art museum, a science museum, and a research facility. So I have the pleasure of working here. I'm the doofus who's on the fourth floor, but like everyone else is a super smart, amazing person here to interact with. So on May 13th, like we said, there's an urban tree conference, Trees in the West. They're going to be talking about some research in tree physiology and climate resistant trees. So this is the date, May 13th. If you want to register, it's just treesinthewest.com. That also, if you need help with registration or travel, please let me know. We do have some scholarships and grants to help out with that. And then we have the Urban Wood Network workshop happening on April 11th, which is just around the corner. So this is to link together our arborists, our fabricators, and our Urban Wood Network folks to discover one another and then also talk about how these woods can be used other than going through the tub grinder. So pretty cool, lots of artisans and great displays happening that night. Also could be a cash bar, just so you know. So thirdly, I wanted to mention the CTC website upgrades. The community tree ordinances are all listed for the state of Colorado on the CTC website now. These are the most up-to-date ordinances we have as a resource for all the communities in Colorado to try to say, oh, how can we change our ordinance, or what are other people doing with their ordinances? IRA money can pay for some of these ordinance changes. And so if we have that resource out there, you can tap into it. Also, we are going to be hiring because Cammie and I are overwhelmed. If you don't know, the amazing Donna and the amazing Dana both had opportunities, Donna in retirement and Dana in U.S. Forest Service, to leave at the same time. And so Cammie and I have been trying to cover it. But there were 3 people, now there's 2 people, and now there's 2 extra programs on top of us too. So we're a little bit overwhelmed. So we are going to be hiring some people starting in April. Our first position as tree equity specialist will be open. So if you are in the realm and you want to try, please put your application in. Okay. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what are the IRA grants? What do the IRA grants fund here in Colorado? What makes IRA grants different from other tree grants here in Colorado? Who can apply for them? And then when will they be available and how to apply? So it lots of slides. I apologize already for not putting pictures in there, but we're going to get through this, I promise. So what are the IRA grants? IRA is Inflation Reduction Act. Basically, it was passed in 2022 to address some climate change and impacts on disproportionately impacted communities. There was $250 million given directly to states and $1.5 billion nationwide for about 400 projects through the U.S. Forest Service. The focus was on what was called the Justice 40 initiative, which means 40% of that has to go to disproportionately impacted communities. We're going to talk about what that means. So IRA grant goals. The Inflation Reduction Act was to increase equitable access to urban tree canopy, was to broaden community engagement in local urban forest planning and tree planting, was to improve community and urban forest resilience to climate change. So those are the 3 big broad goals this funding was supposed to address. The Justice 40, like I said before, was an initiative that said all this funding has to be funded 40% to communities that had disadvantaged situations, whether it's economic, marginalized, or by pollution or underinvestment. What are DI communities? Disproportionately impacted is a very hard word to say. I have practiced it in the mirror many times. That's why I could say it. but we're going to call them DI communities from here on out in the presentation. So DI communities have already been kind of discovered, and they are defined differently depending on who you're asking as far as economic indicators, indices, things like that. But this grant is using what's called the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, or what we call CJUST, in terms of a map. There are other maps out there. There's an EPA map. There's a map here in the state of Colorado that identify other communities. But this is the map that we're using for this first year of this grant. The grayed out areas are good examples of where DI communities exist in Colorado. So also the Indian reservation, any Native American tribal lands are also part of this and are qualified to be part of this grant. I have yet to have too much interaction with those communities, unfortunately, but if you have any connections, let me know, because I would love to get more of that community involved with this grant too. Okay, so how much money did Colorado get? The state, Colorado State Forest Service, got $4.875 million to distribute in a grant program, which is what we're going to talk about today. Other cities in Colorado received direct funding through the U.S. Forest Service in the amount of about $23 million. Any of those communities here today want to raise their hands as who got direct funding? No? Yeah, okay, there you go. Thank you. Okay, so there's a few of them out. There's 8 total that got some direct funding. Greeley also was one of them. So in terms of what's available this year, so the total available in 2024 will be 1.6 million. We rarely say the million word when it comes to urban forestry, but this year we get to do that. So that's kind of cool. There are 2 grant ranges we're going to do. The first one is the smaller neighborhood and smaller community grant level, which is 20,000 to 100,000. And the second is the larger community grants, which are 100,000 to 250,000. Now, do you have to be a smaller community or larger community to apply for either one of those? No. It's just, that's the intention behind it. If you are starting out a program, you probably don't need the bigger amount to start out with. The smaller amount would probably do. So those are the 2 levels. What can IRA grants fund? This is an amazing list. In urban forestry, we've never had the ability to spend federal money on these kinds of things. So this is pretty cool. Tree planting on public or private property, irrigation for trees only, hazard tree removal, tree pruning, inventories, career pathway development, volunteer community training and organization, management plan creation, and urban wood utilization. Yes, ma'am.
Tree and removal on private property as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. So we have rarely been able to use this money on private properties before. And we all know one of the biggest challenges we have at DI communities is removals, right? And so along those lines, a lot of the states, we're one of the last states that have gotten our funding, but in terms of the other states that I communicate with, a lot of them are using this money for that purpose. Yes, Adrian.
So the hazard tree removal part,
Yeah.
Could I use that on private properties in disadvantage?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So all the activities, if you will, in terms of the grant, like removals, any kind of replacements, any kind of pruning, have to be done in DI communities or right across the street. It can be on the same road, but just right across the street. Yes, sir. Yeah, so those are federal level. So they use like poverty guidelines in terms of federal poverty guidelines. They use, I think there's different like EPA standards for where there's been past issues pollution-wise in those areas. But if you know anything about federal poverty guidelines, they're really messed up. Everyone admits that. So in terms of those indices, like it's a combination of indices that go together to create those maps. Yeah. Okay. All right. What makes Colorado IRA grants different? And I hate the name Colorado IRA grants. So if you have another name for it, please let me know. So these are not your typical tree planting grants. If you've been in tree planting grant realm for a while, you know, it's sort of like a wait and rush situation. Like wait for the money, get the money, go, plant. And this is not going to be the case. So also, this is not just for tree planting. This is for capacity building. Remember, we don't say the million word very often in urban forestry, right? So we got to look to the future with this money. We got to make sure that we're actually investing in capacity with this money so that if we don't ever see this money again in our lifetimes, we have some results from this that will last, okay? So this is different than just a tree planting grant, okay? Focus will be on partnerships and capacity building within and around the DI areas, not just tree planting, okay? Here's the other things that are different. There's no match. If you know anything about federal grants, it's always 50-50 match. There is no match for this. We did that on purpose. Colorado State Forest Service applied for what's called a match waiver. We're able to get it because we're focusing on DI communities 100% for this, okay? So no match, okay. And no rush, like I said. DI requirements, all tree activities, like we just talked about, can only be done in DI areas, including across the street. This includes pruning, removals, planting, mulching, irrigation. So anything you would do on the ground in terms of tactile input has to be done in a DI community, okay? Inventories and management plans are different. They can include the surrounding areas, but program development must be on DI communities. In other words, you can do an inventory management plan if you're doing it for a city around your DI communities that's inside your city limit. But in terms of the results of that inventory, if you're going to do something with that inventory, it has to be done in the DI areas. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Higher standards. Okay, so like I said, because we don't say that million word very often, we have to set a bar with these projects, right? We have all been there when we unload the trees off of the truck and a third of them are a little root bound or have some, you know, something going on with them. And what do we do when that happens? A lot of times, because we waited for them for about 3 months. What do we do? Louder. We plant them. I know all of you have done this because I've done it too. So we go, oh, I think we can make this work, right? Like we'll do a little bit of pruning on the roots. We'll uncover some areas. We'll kind of squeeze it back together, stick it in the hole, make it work, right? We are not doing that with these grants, okay? We are not doing that. We have to have a higher standard, which means we're going to treat these neighborhoods just like we do a downtown project, just like we do a cemetery, just like we do any kind of very important place in our town. And why are we going to do that? Because one, some of those neighborhoods have never seen this kind of effort before. And if we fail in this, guess what? We'll never get back in those neighborhoods for years, sometimes decades. So we have to do this right when we do it, okay? So be picky. Put on your persnickety hat, put it on, and make sure that you pull that bill down. Go, no. I want you to practice saying no. Okay, because we got to make sure these are done right. Okay.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I assume there'll be interaction with the homeowner as far as care goes.
Yeah, and that's going to be up to our cities to figure out how that happens, but we're going to talk about that. It's a great question, Neil. Thanks. So, okay. So the other higher standards, 90% survival after 4 years. Now, I have talked to many people about this. Some people are like, oh no. Other people are like, yeah, because it's about time, right? So we will require that you have at least 90% survival on these plantings after 4 years. That means you're going to have some replacements. That means you got a budget for your replacements, which this grant will pay for. Okay, so you got to be smart about this in terms of replanting. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Can communities awarded grants hire consultant arborists with this fund?
Yes. Absolutely. Good question. Yep. Okay. Let's keep.
Request to stay close to Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carrie, get back in your box. Okay. All right, higher standards. Yes, ma'am.
The 90% survival, so budgeting for that, does that mean you don't get reimbursed until the back end?
No, what we're gonna do probably is we'll do a first inspection and second inspection. So first inspection will be post-planting, will be like too deep, you know, root bound, things like that. Second inspection will be survival. So depending on when you want to schedule that, like you'll have to time it so that you'll have the 90% at that point. But we will reimburse. 90%, what are you going to punish us with? Right? So the punishment, if you will, would be that you would not be able to reapply for these grants, right? Okay, so because we are going to have 3 years. Yes, sir.
One of the things, a lot of probably make rules and they don't have a way to enforce them.
Mm-hmm.
Or you follow.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's a great question. Keep that question in mind, though. Okay. Oh, let's go back. Sorry. So no tree planting is allowed a minimum of 6 months. Why? Anybody know why we wouldn't allow you to plant trees with this money for 6 months?
Because it's coming in April.
Ah. Why does that matter? Okay, any other reasons? Mr. Super Trees? Any other reasons? Yes, ma'am.
You can't just walk into a neighborhood and put trees in and expect people to like them.
Yes. Did you guys hear that?
Say it louder.
Say it louder.
Yeah, you cannot just walk into a neighborhood and plant trees and expect people to like that.
Correct. You can't walk into a neighborhood and expect people to like the trees you stick in. Okay. Why does that matter, Dina?
Because that is, you have to build a constituency who loves trees like you do in order for them to thrive and they get to 90% survivability. You have to make friends with the people whose houses have trees in front of them.
You got it. And how do you do that? There's a suggestion at the bottom.
Yeah, who do that? Barbecue.
Yeah.
Your door, like you can, seen a lot of success. These, with really great education around schools in the neighborhoods where you're gonna plant. There's all kinds of great possibilities.
About
Awesome.
planting with the have them help.
Absolutely.
Go. How would you do that? How would you do that? Miss Tree Planting Coordinator for the City of Fort Collins. How would you teach them to plant the trees? Yeah, plant with them. I mean, it's obvious. Sorry. So you're going to use this time to coordinate with the neighborhood to make sure that you are friends with them, make sure that you are doing your best to answer the questions. And I would emphasize this because a lot of our DA neighborhoods are very similar in this way. You are there to listen because you will hear stories. You will hear stories of, well, when I was a young buck in the 70s, I couldn't eat downtown because I was Hispanic, right? I was, when I was so-and-so, they never hooked up my water meter because they said I could wait, right? Like you will hear stories and your job is to listen. Is this part of your urban forestry training? No, but it is now. Congratulations. So your job is to be part of that community, is to listen to that community, to organize with that community, and to be a member of that community. So with that, is there any other reasons you'd want to wait? Freddie, what's another reason you'd want to wait?
Well, wait, because you want to get the best stock you can.
There it is. How do we get the best stock we can?
By ordering in advance and talking to people.
There it is. Super trees. I'm surprised you guys. Yeah. Did you guys hear that online? I don't know. So
No, we're not really hearing the audience, so please repeat.
oh, okay. So the question was, why was another reason we'd want to wait? And the answer from Freddie was because we want to get the best possible planting stock. And to do that, we need to actually order the trees way far in advance. We have another question online. Did they type it in the chat? Okay. We have a hand raised. Is it
That's your
mine?
hand.
Oh, never mind. Ignore that hand. I have no idea how to get that off there. All right. Now we're cooking. Yeah, it was the interpretive dance. It just got me discombobulated. Okay, higher standards, career paths. Okay, so this is an area that's a little different for these grants that some communities expressed interest in, which is the career pathways part of this grant. So this would be helping people from the community actually get the skills to become part of our industry. Okay, Adrian, do you want to say anything about that? You have a great program in that.
Well, yeah, I've been working in this space for a good portion of my career. And, we need not only more people, new people in our, profession. And so both the shops that I've run have had climate training programs. Do just that. It's because if you run a shop, you can't, you put out the job advertisement, nobody applies, because everybody with those skills already has a job. So you gotta grow your own.
Gotta grow your own. I like that. That's gonna be our tagline for this. You gotta grow your own. So Adrian. All right. So this is gonna be a little bit different. I want to make sure that our people that we're training are part of our DI communities. So there will be a requirement for that as part of this grant. But in terms of that, it is a little bit more open-ended.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Say, I have a number of partners I've worked with.
Mhm.
Partner with an organization to do this. Is there a requirement that the person live in the area or that they're only working in? I mean,
No.
because that's kind of hard.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I knew that would kind of come up. So Adrian's question is, does the person have to live in the DI community or do they have to just work in the DI community? No. And I would say you need to come up with metrics for that area. So if you planted trees there or if you're doing removals or pruning there. So come up with your goals that person is going to do in that area. And then just make sure that they achieve them. Does that help? Yes, sir.
Would you use, master gardeners or can extension people to help with either education and or planting or whatever?
Absolutely, totally. So, partnering is going to be a big part of this grant, right? We're going to link people together that don't typically link, right? So it's a great idea to use master gardeners and extension. Okay, higher standards continued. All removals will require replacement tree if the tree is still alive. This is EAB removals. This is hazard trees with some parts still green on it. If the tree is dead, meaning it's been standing dead for a while, right? Bark is coming off things. No replacements are needed, but encouraged. And priority will be placed on projects that replace trees on the same street where removals are done. In other words, DI communities, a lot of them have dog hair stands of Siberian elm popping up all over the place, right? That are endangering people in their backyards, their front yards, or side yards. Sometimes it is not reasonable to replace those trees. Other states are requiring one-to-one replacement. I am not, because I understand this plight. And I think it's more important to get hazard trees out of communities that need the help than it is to replant every single one of them. I want those planted to be really planned out and make sure that they are well positioned, not just haphazardly put in someone's backyard as a replacement. Okay. Okay. I see big nods here. You guys back there? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. But we want you to replant them if you can. That's the thing. Okay. Higher standards, warm body requirement. This kind of goes back to the volunteers. I would like, and CSFS would like, that we have volunteers from the DI neighborhoods. So this would be people that have identified, that we've identified as part of our interaction that first 6 months to a year, that are like, I love trees, blah, blah, blah. Like, how can I help? They would be perfect candidates for the Tree Stewards program. So I would like each of our grants in the DI neighborhoods to have at least one person that is a warm body to actually help with our volunteering in these areas and be trained to do that and be paid. So DI area communities, if you've ever been DI in your life, which most of us have at some point, right? We either grew up DI or we were DI in college. Ramen, right? We know that those are busy lives. They're extremely busy lives. Babysitters, making sure people go to things at school, making sure people go to the doctor, making sure that things happen that are supposed to happen. And if you have just enough money to pay for gas or groceries in a particular month, this is not a high priority for you in terms of planting trees. I'm not going to pretend it would be. But if we're going to pay you to help with this, if we pay you $50 a week to go out and just check 15 trees, make sure they're still there, make sure the mulch is on, make sure that nobody's weed eated them, make sure that the soil is nice and moist, that people have been watering them. And if they're not, ding dong, hey, I live across the street. Like, have you been watering your tree? Like, that's all they need to do, right? We're going to pay them. Then it becomes a priority. And all of a sudden, 150 more bucks a month gets in their checking account. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about that? No. Okay. All right. Perfect. This is very okay. All right. Minimum 5 years. You got to have a commitment to these people for 5 years. Okay. Who can apply? Cities, of course, nonprofit schools, churches, neighborhood groups, or other organizations. A lot of the states have required nonprofit status or city status to be an applicant in these grants. I'm doing it a little different because I'm like that. But these also will be open to neighborhood groups and other groups that can actually organize themselves that want to be part of this. If they can come up with a bank account, they can come up with an actual tax number. If they can come up with a LLC, they could apply for these grants too. Okay. How to apply. Applications will be open on Arbor Day. That's how you remember Arbor Day this year, or when it's due, right? So these will be available on the CTC website and the CSFS websites. We will also list this on our listserv. If you don't know about our listserv, I'll tell you about it in a second. You're going to download the application, fill out the Google documents. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. These federal grants can be very big and cumbersome. Who in this room has ever done a federal grant before? Oh, yes, 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 yes. They're so easy, right? No, they're not. Not with these rules. So we're going to try to make it easy. In terms of Google Docs, we're going to have an online application. We're trying to time it so that it's less than an hour, but definitely want to put your basic information in there and have your project ready before you actually get online. So how do you do that? You take your time. Most of these grants had like a 2-week turnaround. We are going to give you lots and lots of time. You have 3 months. Grants will not be due back till July 31st, actually over 3 months. So lots of time to get this right, to do your organization, to do your research, to make sure you have your ducks in a row. So making sure that you have what you need is important, but not a deal breaker in my book, because there's going to be some unknowns with these projects. The concept is that you put in there what your intention is to do. Okay. All right. Okay. Wait, we don't have any DI. Anybody in this room not have any DI in their community? Okay. There are a few communities out there that don't have any DI areas inside their city limits. Am I sad for those communities? No. I do not spend any time thinking about their plight. And the reason why, this is my hometown, Enid, Oklahoma. This is where I grew up. Guess which side of the gray zone I grew up in? If you guess that side, you're right. So in terms of these grants, you can partner with adjacent communities. I didn't pick one part. Still left out. So I went to high school in Tomlinson, Oklahoma, surrounded by wheat fields. Oh, these are sorry. Get back in your box. Okay, so do we have opportunities here? Yes, we do. If you partner with other communities, you're going to have something that they don't, right? So good example. One that came up last week. Paonia. Does anybody know where Paonia, Colorado is? How big a population is Paonia? Paonia. Little teeny tiny, 1,500. Tree City, USA. Believe it or not. Very proud, Tree City, USA. They want to apply for grant. They don't have any DI, but Hotchkins, which is right down the road, 10 miles, is mostly DI. So I'm like, partner together. Paonia could actually hire the person that would be a forester for both areas. They would focus their efforts on the DI areas initially and then be available using that grant funding to actually do more in that area too. Partner with your communities. Ignore your city limit. Try to look at the big picture. You could also go county if you wanted to do county-wide grant. That also would fit the purpose of this grant. You could go region if you wanted to and do 3 or 4 cities. Yes, sir.
Sure. Same thing maybe with school districts.
Yeah.
My community has 3 schools, they're all Title I.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe the community wouldn't be a DI. I mean, would that be something we could?
As long as you had a DI area in that area, like you have to have DI somewhere, right? Yeah. So if you don't have any DI in the area that you're proposing to partner with, doesn't have DI, it would not qualify. You have to have DI in there. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yep. Introducing the new Colorado Tree View. Thanks to Cami Long. Thanks, Cami. So we have all the DI areas on the new Tree View and all their canopy percentages already on there. So if you're curious to know what your canopy level is in the DI areas in your community, it's on Tree View. You can log in anytime and see your community. It is a little bit tricky to find the right buttons for this, but you can find it. Also, let me go back. Also, you will be required to look at this before you submit your application, because we got to make sure you know where your DI areas are. So making sure that you're aware of those blocks and those canopy percentages is part of this process. Okay. Also, LiDAR canopy data. We're working with the good Planet Geo to actually come up with LiDAR canopy data for all of our DI areas also. What is this going to do? We're going to know exactly where the edges of all of our canopy are in all these areas, so we can actually locate both hazard trees and planting spots in every part of our DI areas. So this will be available as free for any community that wants to be part of this. Okay. Almost done. Again, these will be available for kickoff April 19th, hopefully, fingers crossed. We got some more hoops to jump through with our grants, but we'll get there. Okay, the secret sauce. How do we get one of these grants? Number 1, partner, 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 and partner. Find the people that you've never worked with. Say, hey, we're doing this project. Can you be part of this? Get as many as you can. And if they're related to the DI area, if they're related to fair housing, CDBG, any of those kind of areas too, these are great partners to have. And believe it or not, those folks have a lot of federal funds too. Focus on long-term capacity building for the DI area. Don't hire interns and then fire them once the grant runs out. Don't do it. If you hire them, plan for their future. Hire them, make sure you're committed to them. Make sure that you're giving them the training that they need to make sure that they're successful. Tree equity specialist. This is a new thing in urban forestry. We're hiring one, obviously, but these are city level too. These are people focused on urban forestry in DI areas. Okay. Show a solid relationship with the actual people in the DI areas with your proposal. So go do the footwork. Go make sure you know the people of your neighborhood, know their demographics, know their challenges before you put in your proposal. Show long-term commitment to tree canopy in the DI area beyond the grant time. So you get the grant, things go great for 5 years, then it stops. No, we want this to keep going. Come up, be creative, find ways to make it keep going beyond the grant. Okay. Okay. Urban Forestry Serve. This is our new listserv. Who in here has signed up on the listserv? About half of us. So sign up on the listserv because we're going to be putting announcements on the listserv about these grants. Also, if you have a great idea or you want to communicate with another community that has resources or something, get on the listserv, be like, hey guys, have you thought about this with your grant? You know, different kinds of community interactions that we can have as urban foresters on the listserv. Like, if you're part of PestServe, you know how valuable it is to talk to other people, right? So I don't know about you, but every morning you check that PestServe and you're like, ooh. I want it to be like that for urban forestry too. Okay. Last slide. You guys made it. Congratulations. Yes, ma'am. Okay. You got 4 years. Yeah. Yes. However, thank you for bringing this up. I thought about putting a slide in there about this, but you can voluntarily match if you want to with your own in-kind. So then when you do reimbursement, you can load your in-kind at the very beginning of your grant and get reimbursed for in-kind. So you'll have money to spend on your not in-kind. Does that make sense, everyone? I didn't put it in there because I didn't want to confuse anybody, but when you apply for the, oh, sorry, get back in your box. Yeah, yeah, throw something at me, Amanda. Okay, so the question was, if in terms of these grants, are they all just reimbursement? And the answer is yes and no. If you can tier your grant to be heavily loaded with match on the front end in terms of in-kind, you can get cash payment for the in-kind to help you spend later. So it depends on how you structure your grant. How many in here have done grants before? Okay, so in-kind, you know what that word means? In-kind? Yes. Okay. Anybody not know what that means? Okay. In-kind is just like voluntary hours or hours of work that you would have already done in-house that you can count towards this grant. Okay. But it has to be on that DI side of things, right? You have to be doing part of your project. You're just using your own resources. Does that make sense? Okay, and we'll have another training as part of this. We will have, you probably saw on the slide set, a required 1 hour training before you submit your application because it's complicated. So we'll go through things like how to get good planting stock, how to properly plant a tree, which everyone in this room knows, but we're going to do that for everybody. We're going to talk about how you get reimbursed, how you structure your grant in terms of your budget, things like that too, okay? We're not getting into that today, obviously, but before you apply, you'll be required to do that training. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
If we wanted to apply for both the lower and higher tier grants.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, but it will double your
Repeat the
chances.
question.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Cammy. If you wanted to apply for both the lower and the higher tier grants at the same time, can you? And could you get funded for both of those? Answer is no, you will not get funded for both of those, but yes, you could apply for both if you want to. Okay, that answers your question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Is it possible to share the slide deck with us?
Yeah, so this will be on the CTC website and also CSFS website. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then it's recorded. This whole meeting is recorded. So that will also be available online in those two places. Okay. All right, what else? Yes, ma'am. Hey, thanks for coming, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah.
So CSFS is the like administrator. Correct?
Mhm. Yeah.
And right now, your guys' staff was pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah. There is interest, yes. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Out to fill out in whatever areas might get awarded.
Mhm. Yeah,
The areas near you and helping them. But
absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna have a training with CSFS staff also. This is kind of the first of many, but yeah, in terms of that, the question was, Valerie asked, are the area offices going to be part of the administration of these grants? And I said, yes. as they are willing. As we all know, the IRA money and BIL money that's come into the state has overwhelmed also our area office staff's capabilities too. So we're going to tread lightly. We have the tree equity specialist position we're going to fill. We also have a front range urban forestry coordinator and an eastern urban forestry coordinator position we're going to fill in the next few months. So we'll have more staff to help out with that. But we certainly love to interact with and have the area foresters be part of our programming. So yes, thanks for the question. Yeah. Anybody else? Did I overwhelm you guys? Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah.
On Brody.
Okay.
So Denver got a federal grant,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you might have a few neighborhood organizations that are interested in applying.
Mhm.
Eligible if they apply independent.
Yes. Yeah. As long as your project area doesn't overlap where they're at. It would. Okay. Well, let's talk about that. How's that? So the question was, in terms of the direct funded communities, are they excluded from this first round of grants? And the general answer is yes. However, Denver being as big as it is, like there may be some exceptions depending on what the programming is going to be for that. So yeah. So yeah, direct funded first year are not going to get, there were $23 million worth of direct funded that happened. And so our little tiny 4.875 million is going to be reserved for those communities who really don't have the opportunity right now.
I'm going to
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And so, yeah, let's talk about those and see in terms of the scope of you guys' projects to kind of what you guys are doing also. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So the original IRA grant excluded capital purchases, any kind of purchases.
Right.
I assume that rule carries forward here.
Mm-hmm.
What about rental, say, training program, like need people equipment, right, to train them?
Right. That's a great question. The question was, the original IRA grants excluded equipment as a purchase for those federal level requirement. Will these grants allow for rental of equipment? The answer is, I don't know. Carrie, what do you think? Okay. Okay.
We just don't want you to buy it because you have to have.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as
Repeat that, please.
Oh, sorry. Sherry said, yes, you can rent equipment. And we just don't want you to buy equipment with this grant. So yeah. Okay. And then there is a $5,000 limit for any individual line item purchase. This includes irrigation. Do not hire your local irrigation contractor to put together a nice package and then say, oh, it's going to cost us $30,000 to do this irrigation project. Don't do it because we will not fund it. What you can do is line item that out and say, okay, we're going to do 300 feet of polyline. We're going to connect to a controller that we have already bought. Like you're going to have to piece that out. Do not put anything over $5,000 in there that would be considered equipment. Okay. No controllers, no boring under the road. Those will all have to be costs that you figure out. Okay. Back there. Okay, back there. No? Okay. Just stretching. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So 1.6 this year.
Mhm.
Timeline coming up for communities that aren't ready, don't have their ducks in a row.
Yep.
Chances next year.
Yep. Chances next year and chances the year after. So we'll have over 1 million next year and over 1 million the next year after that. 3
Just
point.
with a shorter timeline to complete projects.
Correct. Yeah. First year they'll have the 4. Second year they'll have a 3. Third year they'll have 2. Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? No. Yes, sir.
Sorry if I missed this.
Yeah.
On your slides, but is this going to be like in the DI areas, will this be focused on public or private? We'll get into your backyard.
Up to you. Yeah. In terms of removals, there could be backyard removals. In the grant specs, we're going to go through during the training. We'll talk about requirements for contractors for this. But of course, we would want them to be very highly licensed and workers' comped and liabilitied out. So that being said, like, yeah, up to you in terms of the priorities that you determine when you interact with your DI neighborhoods, what their priorities are for their neighborhood. Yes, ma'am.
And these grants are used for treatment on private trees, such as EAP trees.
Yes, however, that's not going to be the primary kind of focus for these grants.
Question,
Because, oh, sorry, would this be used for EAB treatment in terms of grants? Yes, you can use it. No, it's not a priority for these grants. So there may be some negotiation when you submit your grant if you have a lot of those kind of maintenance items. If it's one tree in the DI area or a historic tree or some kind of significant situation, then that may be an exception. So does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Online, we have a question. This is a profit gathering. So how will the uninformed cities and towns become aware of this opportunity?
Ooh, that's a great question. We have a whole team of media people. Sorry, speak to the computer. Amanda says, speak to the computer. So the question was, how are we going to get the word out to other cities and towns about these grants? We have a whole team of media people at the CSFS. So if you had the Coloradan day before yesterday and you read the article about all the new pests or the expansion of pests on the national, or sorry, state forests, gosh, screw that up. That came from our media group. So we are able to get word out in the press about this. Also, the Colorado Municipal League will be looped into this too. So we have some outreach. We have some people out there that can actually get the word out. We'll also have it on the CTC website and the CSFS website too. And of course, we rely on your word of mouth too. So anybody you want to tell about this, we're happy to have. Okay. Anybody else have their hand raised? Oh. Yes, ma'am. The question was, if we apply for funding this year, are we able to apply in future years? And the answer is yes. Yep. You would not be applying for the same projects, obviously. Yeah, but you would, you could expand. They hung up. You could expand on, say, if you had a partnership with adjacent communities and you wanted to hire a crew that was going to do all the hazard tree removals in a DI area, right? Maybe you only had enough to do a quarter of them and you wanted to do more. Maybe you want to do your plantings back the next year. Maybe some other opportunity arises. These DI maps change. And so every year you're going to need to check it before you apply for these grants because you may have more DI than you thought the year before. Okay, does that answer? Yeah, okay. Way back there?
Yeah, one of the things that saw or heard at the start of this national level was there would be additional opportunity. The funding requests came in way over.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that happening at this level? There's like 4 million in this first round requested. You won't have.
I have not heard of any more IRA funding coming through the pipe.
I mean, just be based on your pot.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
First application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you get like 5.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. We have a group that's going to have to make some hard decisions. Yeah, in terms of the question, it was, what do we do if we have $5 million in requests for the first year of funding for this grant? We just make hard decisions. We would encourage the ones that did not get chosen to apply again next year. And it seems like a lot of money. It does, but it's not, right? It's not. It is, as we all know, there are billions of dollars of work and billions of dollars of planting spaces out there that deserve to be planted. And so, like I said, you really have to be strategic with this and apply for money that's going to have ripple effects, right? and manage the project to have ripple effects. Otherwise, it's a drop in the pond, right? So really think this out. Let me give you examples, okay? Let me give you an example from my past. How are we doing on time, by the way?
Pretty good.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you guys hear me? Okay, Tammy? Okay, all right. So I was a city forester before city foresters were cool. I started in Oklahoma. I was the first city forester in a little town called Stillwater, which is where Oklahoma State University is. And I was an intern. I got hired with $10,000, working for $8 an hour. I had a 500-gallon water tank, a couple shovels, and a pickup. That's all. I didn't have an operating budget. I didn't have any kind of, support. I grew that program into, within a 2-year period, having over $1 million in budget and having a budget in every single department at the city. I had a budget in sanitation. I had a budget in electric. I had a budget in public works. I had a budget pretty much parks department and planning department everywhere, because I made a strategic choice to take on every single tree issue that the city had. I was in my 20s and I was very ambitious. But how did I plant trees? I didn't have an operating budget, right? I had budget to remove trees whenever there was a big tree in the way, and they'd call me and say, Carrie, the neighbor's yelling at me, do something, right? I would go out there and say, okay, what are we gonna do? Okay, how about we, I got a little budget in public works. Let's do, instead of trenching through the roots, how about we go under it? How about we do a directional bore under this tree? Like, yeah, no, that'd be great. Problem solving. I took on the hard jobs of problem solving tree issues for a city, because every city has tree issues. They all do. So that's how I build a budget. How did I plant trees? I used a program called Neighborwoods. I copied it off a guy named John Gydritis. Sherry, do you know John Gydritis? Yes, ma'am. Was the city forester in Austin, was crazy, this guy. He did lotteries, literally lotteries, to get funding for his tree planting. He started a project with a dry cleaner called Brown's Dry Cleaning, which for years funded his tree planting efforts. That was the program I copied. I partnered with a guy named Henry Wells, who owned the only dump in Stillwater, which was basically a crack in his pasture. That's where the stuff went. So Henry, let's just say he had some making up to do. So Henry and I partnered. He was also a budding developer, and he had a neighborhood he was working on building houses. And I said, I will plant trees all through this neighborhood. This was a low-income neighborhood. It had been hit by a tornado 2 years before and sucked 4 houses right off their foundations. We planted 3,000 trees in that neighborhood, 5-gallon containers, using volunteer planting and his money. And we did it all without any city funding. If you think outside of the box, if you think in a way that you can leverage the situation with private and other partners, like I said, partner, you can do some amazing things, right? So I'm going to leave you with that. Go forward, make things happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carrie. Really appreciate that. Unless we have any other questions, we're a little early today, which is okay because we can go tool around a little bit and check out the facilities here. Really appreciate talking about that. Really appreciate Amanda for keeping Carrie in her cage today. Yeah. And of course, Mary for being our primary organizer and all this. Is really fantastic. Thanks for getting the space as well, Carrie. This is a great building. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions about the Front Range tree list, Jim is here. He's got a couple copies of the list with him. If you want to take a quick look before we go walk around, made some bigger changes to that this year, and I think we'll hopefully, if you have any feedback, of course, send it out and we can talk about why we did what and all their options. But thank you so much all for coming today. Really appreciate it. See you in April. Okay, enter CEUs in Zoom if you want ISA CEUs, and there's a sheet going around the room at the moment. All right, everybody. Thank you much. Yeah.
Yeah, the tree list is at the graphic designer now, so we hope to have it back by the end of the week. And then it'll be up on all the different websites. And we were able to secure some money from a couple nurseries to get hard copies printed also.
Okay, excellent. So I'll just repeat after the.
Just watch your website, it'll be on all of the organizations.
Excellent. So I'll just repeat that for the folks online. As far as the Front Range tree list goes, it's at the graphic designer right now. It should be done in the next week or so, and we'll see that pop up on all the different online websites. In addition to that, we got some funding to do some hard copies of that, so you'll see them around at nurseries and municipalities and everything else. Really appreciate everybody coming today. We will see you in April.
Sure, your email and then I'll send you for the secretary.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. We didn't do it last year because we already planned for the month of that, so we're like.